on the right-hand side of his forehead. But you know what? Serral's a trendsetter, man. When you hit millionaire status like Serral has, there's a certain point where just whatever you do, you're actually just fashionable. You're setting fashion, actually.
Oh yeah, as we speak, I'm like curling up like whatever pieces left I have of my hair to get a horn like he does. So
yeah, I do the same too, but I have big bald spots on my head. So
same. Well, we're in the game, Ravi, and spawning in the top left-hand side of Berlingrad, it is the GOAT, Serral.
Down here in the bottom right-hand side of the map, we have our blue Protoss player. He is SKillous. The skillful. Your boy, Cats. Your boy, SKillous. I know you've been tight with him. I know you've been cheering him on and stuff, but I think it's just for everyone that has been following SKillous for the past like 4 or 5 years now or something on his journey up through the European scene. It's been so heartening to see him really start to, I guess, like live up to a lot of the potential that people felt like he had. I know Roddy's another person who's been also hyping it up for such a long time, and he's been killing it this season.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for a long time, I've been a huge fan of SKillous. He's always, for years now, been on the up and up, and he has been always talking about, like, a couple of years ago, he was saying, like, he wants to be, like, the Beyond of Protoss, right? Like, he wants to bring that flashy style and stuff like that, and he is a person that gets down on himself quite a bit when he doesn't perform, and emotions at times have gotten the better of him, and he is one of the more emotional pro players in Europe in that regard. Like he is not cold and calculated like many other players, to be honest. And so I talked to him a lot about mentality and just approach to the game in the last few years, and I've always rooted for him on that regard. And he was in Root Gaming for a while, right? Like, he won a bunch of our tournaments. He won like every tournament while he was on the team. And then he found a new home in GP, now teamless, but we're rooting for Team Liquid to pick him up, but don't want to do it.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's been a major difference in the way he's been approaching stuff more recently, or if there's been some like big development that he's had to really unlock a bit more of that potential?
Well, I think that there is a coincidental thing that happens when he actually goes to the Team Liquid headquarters, because Serral with a misplaced hatchery will readjust. But yeah, I think that part of his hot streak is also kind of just having the relief of being there. Like, a lot of the time, for example, when I talk to him and he was in Russia, like, we talk about like meditating and exercising and like some of the rituals that Uthermo was talking about. I think that those are important to center you to some degree, right? And like exercise, for example, like running and stuff like that is known to help with your mentality, your brain, like just produces gray matter, for hell's sake. But sometimes we'd be like, yeah, why don't you go and like take a run or something? Like, we'd try to work on those rituals, but then he would be very demotivated after because it was too cold, it was snowing, right? It was like impossible to do things like that at like certain points. So I think the fact that he is surrounded by the environment that is provided in the Team Liquid headquarters, presumably players, staff, and so on, I think should be pretty good for his mentality. And I think that's in great part what's been holding him back.
That's fantastic to hear. I'm looking forward to seeing how things are going to go for him in this match now. But we do have kind of normal looking openings in the meanwhile. It does look like, SKillous going to be going for the third base. We got Serral going for still more drones and adding on the safety spores and everything against the Stargate opening. So no crazy cheeses, no craziness really happening. In fact, the most active thing that's happened so far this game has really just been the misplaced hatchery from Serral, which is really not too much of a happenstance. So not too big, but it does speak to Serral not placing his hatchery correctly. He's placed millions of those, I assure you. So yeah, it is not nothing in that sense. It is minimal in the grand scope of the game and what it may entail in terms of resources lost and so on. There's no shield battery here for SKillous, so Serral looking to punish that by breaking in. The Oracle is going to show up, but the Lynx are going to get in to at least get a scout, possibly a probe. Is there a warp in available for SKillous? We'll find out soon. Yeah, micro going to be happening on both fronts. It looks like SKillous mismicroing slightly there with the Oracle. Takes a lot of damage and also uses a bit of the Pulsar Beam on the Queens instead of the drones I think you meant to target. I guess just these Lings being able to do a little bit of the extra damage. And actually, in a weird way, the Ling's probably helping a bit with the defense against the Oracle.
For sure, 100%.
Split up his attention.
1,000,000% Ravi. That's a very astute observation. That is definitely what happened there, and I think that also a little bit of indecision. Very difficult to make the decision. When I looked at the oracles moving into the queens, I'm thinking, does he go for the queen or does he go for drones? Because the queens, if Serral doesn't pay attention for like a second, you can actually take that fight, right? Like 2 oracles against 2 queens, and there wasn't a transfuse available. So it's an issue of, are the queens close enough to the spore? And they were in that little spot where it's like difficult to say. Like, can they back away? It's probably an issue of how fast Serral reacts. But Serral reacted pretty quick, and SKillous readjusted to take at least 1 drone.
Yeah. All kind of little advantages going for either side. No one having a really definitive massive lead by any way, shape, or form. But as the oracles do start to move on around, and we're going to potentially see one of these oracles go down if those queens are able to target fire, which I am assure you that Serral will target fire where he can. But yeah, melee is going to be coming on out alongside a lot of these roaches being produced.
Yeah, and that's an interesting approach. A lot of the time, Circ players, again, Lambo was telling me at this point, there's a lot of stock being placed on Baneling runbys, on just trying to do economical damage and winning in that regard. I personally didn't think it was amazing against Hearthstone, right? Like, that is where I think Serral took a lot of his disadvantages in that matchup because they weren't working out. Hearthstone had like a very good layer defense, and we see something similar from SKillous here, already kind of walling off his third. And he has a pylon next to the gas as well for additional warpins. So Serral is going to have to go through multiple layers and hope that SKillous is not paying attention at different points in time to get those Baneling runbys in. And that is what the melee indicates. Because it's melee and roaches, like you pointed out, he wants the +2 to get those Banelings one-shotting the probes.
Definitely makes a lot of sense. Be able to maximize the damage and ensure that it's not just, oh, bunch of Banelings roll on in with +1 melee or +0 melee, and then all the probes survive because only 1 Baneling end up connected. You get that 1 Baneling in, and once you get +2 weapons, it's just a probe massacre. So see what Serral's going to be able to accomplish with that once he actually gets up to that point. But for now, he is still just cranking out more units. He's gotten up to a pretty healthy drone count, but the Spire being added on as well is going to finally come in over here with his Overseer and get a full glimpse of everything coming on out, including the Colossus being produced, Thermal Lance over here, and the big flood of gateways.
Yeah, the Spire is very interesting. Most likely going to be just for a few Muta, try to force out some additional defenses from SKillous. And if SKillous wants to move out at some point, you know, he's going to have to account for those Muta, not just in Warpins, but potentially making some cannons, or even maybe hoping for an overreaction back into Stargate units in the form of Phoenix. So there's 11 Muta on the way for Serral now.
Yeah, it's always a little bit scary to me as a Protoss player. I feel like I've, PTSD about mutas just catching you by surprise, catching you by ambush when you don't have blink, you don't have any Phoenix out on the map, and it's going to be kind of a question of when is the moment that the oracles or some other units actually scout out and spot the mutas coming across the map, and how prepared his skill's going to be, where is his army position, because I feel like it is a very frustrating spot when the mutas just totally catch you by surprise. But with Revelation tagged on the larva, I think he may have just caught a glimpse of that muta.
Yeah, there is already Muta on the other side of the map, however, and they're angling to go into a third where I think there's 1 cannon, but it's not really in a good position here. So the probes are going to have to run and tuck themselves in between the cannon and shield battery. Would have been perhaps a good spot, but instead SKillous is going to run all the way back to his natural base expansion and try to, I guess, warp in there to defend 2 bases at once worth of probes. However, this is 11 Muta, so the Stalkers are not going to suffice, and Serral gets on top of the mineral line. This is already nasty amounts of damage. SKillous is going to go on the other side and say, okay, I guess I'm kind of all in there, because the Muta are not great at, defense, basically, but the Colossus gets surrounded from behind, and this is looking all but over wraps.
Oh, it's an absolute massacre. I mean, brilliant job by Serral. Keeps the Mutas relatively unnoticed for such a long time, then is able to force SKillous into an all-in position, and it just absolutely demolishes the army. Anything we said about Serral, oh, misplaced Hatchery, maybe he's not playing up. No, just actually dominated that match. There's not really a fearful point in that game for him.
Yeah, I think a lot of it does come down to what you were mentioning, though, from the, it's just a classic Protoss position of I didn't scout your Muta in time. And then you're in so much trouble because, they're going to do so much damage that SKillous has 2 options: play from behind economically against a Serral that's already playing, to expand and for that economy, or go all in and hope that, 2,200 resources worth of army not being there in the shape of the Muta is going to be enough to get you the victory. So difficult to blame him, but Serral was well prepared, gets the flank and gets on top of the Colossus, and SKillous, he didn't want to move out. He was just forced to, so didn't have all the pieces, all the planning.
Yeah, definitely a tough spot to be in. Well, we're going to get ready to move into game number 2 on Glittering Ashes. We didn't really talk about like their series history and stuff versus each other because they haven't actually played a crazy number of times. They played like 4 series, but it is worth mentioning just because Zombie Grub isn't here to mention it, and I feel like she would if she was. And of course, SKillous was one of those Grubba-Lubba-Dub-Dubs in the Caster Civil War, and that was one of the places SKillous really popped off. SKillous beat Serral 1-0 in that Caster Civil War match, so he's definitely capable of it, even though I feel like that first game didn't really showcase the best of his abilities. I think, as you said, Katz, it's one of those things where I don't like the reason why he lost game number 1 is something that you can just kind of say like, shoot, okay, let's make sure that doesn't happen again in game number 2. Try and keep an eye on things.
For sure. I think that was just, a little bit of a surprise there for SKillous. And we can see that he's taking a little bit of time, right? Like he's probably going and just taking a breather, washing his face or something like that. So some sort of resetting ritual, because again, he can get inside of his own head. So that's good to see that he's taking a little bit of a minute here before the next match begins. But yeah, I'm with you, Ravi. I mean, Serral is a beast, and when he did lose to SKillous in the Caster Civil War, I mean, a lot of that I think was because Serral was exploring like what his new options were against the new Protoss playstyles, because what he did then was a Hydra Baneling all-in, and it didn't look super strong. Like obviously it's Serral executing it, and that's always scary for anyone, but SKillous had a brilliant defense. And normally we know Serral not to be that type of aggressive player, but rather like the player that likes to sit back a little bit. And now we're getting a little bit more of a blueprint of what Serral's new approach to CVP is. And having talked to Lambo about what the overall consensus of the European Zergs on what the approach to the matchup should be, it seems very clear that he likes those Banelings, he likes that +2, he likes the economic game right now, like dragging it out and trying to do economic damage and taking it from there, right? Like the Muta also we saw against Hearthstem. So it seems like he has a structure now in place that he probably didn't have back then. Back then it was like, how do I do it? Now he seems to at least think he knows how to do it.
Yeah, it's been really fun watching Serral's PvZ lately, just because I say fun, but also as a Protoss, it's scary to watch just because I feel like the way that he uses his Banelings, you'll see kind of what you were talking about before, the full walls, the full preparation. It looks like it's just an impenetrable defense against the Banelings, but Banelings just go after the buildings, and then the Protoss, you just have to be so on point about every single time there's one of those run-bys, you immediately go restart rebuilding that wall. If you don't, the next run-by is going to be, another like 45 seconds to a minute later, and then that ends up getting 30, 40 workers or something. So it's something you have to be on point against versus Serral.
1,000,000%. Let's do the intros real quick here, as in the bottom left-hand side of the map, it is the blue Protoss player, SKillous.
And up here on the top right-hand side of the map, the only player in the entire DreamHack Europe or North America that is yet to drop a map. It is Ensis Esports' Serral.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. That is one of the more unintuitive things about playing Zerg. I think at a high level is when you have to kind of, trade extremely inefficiently to open up a pathway to trade all right later on. And this happens pretty much in every matchup. Like when Zerg players, for example, play lurker styles in CVT, that happens a lot, right? There's going to be PFs situated. There's going to be like contingencies of tanks and stuff. And then you throw an entire army onto a location and it doesn't look like it does much. But if it breaks through like a lot of the reinforcements, then you have an opening for later exploiting that. And that's a lot of what we saw with also this matchup in Serral versus Hearthstem yesterday. He kind of kept applying pressure with Baneling runbys over and over and over to the same position, and each time there was a little bit less defense. And for the first 2 or 3 times, Hearthstem trades extremely cost efficiently, but he is not quick enough, as you were mentioning, to rebuild his wall off, to retighten things, make sure that he continues to have that sentry available, right? Like things that it's like a lot of the time, if you're not an experienced Zerg player, it feels so bad to do the first type of attempt, the first couple of attempts, that you just kind of can't give up. But if you're one of the best in the world, like Serral is, you know exactly which advantages you're getting, and then you can look to exploit those later.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. It kind of is reminiscent of just how Zerg players, oftentimes when they are on the aggressive, Terran and Protoss players usually do need to heavily rely on some kind of positional advantage, or having things that are basically acting as like a big anchor, right? Like that is a big concept when you're facing off versus Zerg, is that you have an anchor of something, whether it be a shield battery with overcharge, or a planetary fortress, or the bunker, or siege tanks, or widow mines, or like there's something that's acting there as a positional anchor that allows you to fortify a position defensively in a heavy way versus Zerg. And as soon as that collapses, yeah, like there's the gates just kind of open up. So it's always scary, I think, trying to come up with a good game plan versus that. But I think it's really, there's not a lot of shortcuts for it, right? You just have to be very on point about re-establishing those anchors as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. So let's see if SKillous is going to be able to do that, but that's going to be later coming into the mid game. For now, it's about these two adepts trying to find an opening. They already forced the 4 Zerglings, one of which apparently already fall out on the map. So SKillous is going to back away and use these 2 adepts most likely to secure an expansion, because now the Oracle makes its way across the map.
Yeah, pretty normal looking game again, and it's going to be multiple of those Oracles coming on out. Those 4 colors over here is just a single queen, but there is a second queen. So going to be paired with the adepts and getting some good potential harassment done, in the sense that it's at least delaying some mining time here and there, and no real losses taken on either side.
Yeah, and that shade was really good as well, because it makes it so that the links have to stay back at the natural base, and allows for the adepts to actually escape, because they are running away from the shade, right? SKillous did give Serral a little bit too much credit, perhaps. I think if he had just rallied the first adept into the natural, he would have found a little bit of damage, because Serral only had 1 queen, and the second one arrived a little bit later there. But yeah, I mean, SKillous, so far so good. Oh, 3 drones against Serral. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I've been loving the way that SKillous has been able to just position and control a lot of these units. He's doing a lot of indirect damage on top of the couple of workers he's been able to kill. Just, you've seen now 4 or 5 times Serral had to pull all of his drones over to a mineral patch. Effectively, you can kind of think of it as Serral just stops mining with an entire base for like 4 or 5 seconds. It's not a ton of damage, but it's that safe bit of damage SKillous has been able to repeatedly get, which is, I mean, I think a lot more than you oftentimes will get versus someone like Serral.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've seen this situation happen to for so many Protoss against Serral, and it's just so difficult to do any damage. That stasis accomplishes what it was looking for. I mean, there's not much more to be found against the likes of Serral, really, and SKillous doing a fantastic job in this early game indeed. He has also secured his 3rd without even having the adepts there defensively, which means that these links from Serral have also not been as active as they would have liked to be. Now finally getting out on the map, knowing that the adepts are not there, Serral setting up a great perimeter of vision around his base, but this is the first time he gets to really poke on the other side, which is a bit uncharacteristic.
I love the idea that the Zerglings try and run up to the top left, and then they realize that they're actually walled in by all the gateways. It's like, oh, actually, I'm trapped in over here. I'm not actually here to harass. They're here to kill me. But gets out of there alive with the Lings regardless. And okay, we do see now with the big gateway flood coming on out and Blink being researched over here, it is kind of the first big signs of what SKillous is sort of planning his big mid game to be. It's going to be a pretty scary looking army, but I think it is the mid game that we have yet to see whether or not SKillous is going to be able to hold himself against Serral with.
Yeah, and I'm very excited for this, because I look at that Wolof, and my first thought is that it's so susceptible to like Roach Ravager and stuff like that. So if you are going to sit back as the Protoss player, like, and tech up, if you're going for like, you know, obviously you're not going for Stargates if you're dropping 3 gateways as a Wolof, but if you were going for the late game in any way, shape, or form, then that Wolof becomes a little bit of a liability. So this is consistent, however, with SKillous' strategy, which is to be somewhat aggressive. He is taking a 4th, but he's staying pretty basic as far as the unit composition. He's going to get a ton of Blink Stalkers, now adding Charge and Storm. but I think he wants to be out on the map. And if we look again at the indirect damage of the early game, Serral does not have the creep threat that we're used to at this point in time.
Yeah, creep threat is extremely pushed back. Even with the stock, even before the stalkers starting to push back some of that creep, there was not that much creep spread going on forward. So that's going to give SKillous a lot more room to work with in terms of where he can try and be a bit more aggressive before Serral starts getting that speed advantage, but also just the vision for Serral. If you start talking about things a little bit later on in the game about having Zealot charge lot run bys at a base or be able to try and catch Serral a bit out of position, like that's when all these kind of opportunities start opening up. So Serral really wants to start getting some of that creep spread going further forward, but you can already see he's trying to take another base a little bit further out in the bottom right, and there's actually there's like no creep in front of it. The base technically is off of creep right now.
Yeah, Serral's gonna move out with a little bit of his army here and try to see if he can find something. Links are just being split to look for extra bases and to set up a perimeter outside of Skillous's base so that he sees the oracles moving, any warp prisms coming out of his base, any major move outs will be spotted from the Finnish Phenom. And yeah, it's pretty cool. If we can turn off actually Skillous's vision right now, Serral is doing a lot of what he would do with creep with just circlings instead as far as just gathering information. So that's pretty nice.
Yeah, I definitely like that. The 3 Corruptor is also an interesting mix-in over here for Serral, just being able to handle that Warp Prism since he is very ground-focused with his army. But this is going to be the big scary attack coming in here for SKillous. He's got Storm, he's got a lot of Blink Stalkers, plus 2 weapons is going to be finishing up in the near future. He wants to hold off against a direct fight for at least a little bit longer until plus 2 weapons finishes, but that's when these Stalkers become extremely powerful.
Yeah, and I love the Storm as well because that's going to account for a lot of the circlings. So Skillous most likely is going to be looking for Storm onto either large clumps of roaches or the circlings as they posture forward. Serral's going to go for a counterattack here, and the shield battery actually... Oh, beautiful! Beautiful overcharge on the shield battery in the back, but it's not going to be enough barely to save the one in the front, and that means he's going to have to evacuate this probe line. That was great because the shield battery in the front couldn't be overcharged, but it does pull Skillous's army back in the end. So almost a super clutch save from Skillous that would have bought him time to perhaps keep his army out on the map and just defend with a couple warpins, but Serral still gets what he came for, basically.
Yeah, I mean, he's heavily delaying the attacks from Skillous, but a big charge lot reinforcing warpin back at home is going to be able to push back a majority of these Lings, guaranteeing those charges forward. A couple of Banelings going to be mixed in over here, but they're going to have a hard time finding connections on units that they really want to connect with at this moment, especially since they don't quite have Zerg or Baneling speed just yet. So Skillous is moving around. He's actually continuing to harass with a single Zealot on the bottom right-hand base, even a little bit of harassment on the top left. And I love the way that Skillous is playing this positionally.
Yeah, it's great, but yeah, I cannot overemphasize how much that runby did for Serral there. These Banelings are gonna eat through those. Oh, never mind. Great repositioning there from Skillous, looking even to split his army. But yeah, what Serral was looking for, like you pointed out to Ravi, was time, and time was for those Broodlords. With Broodlords out, and as they grow in numbers, Skillous is not gonna want to take that head-on engagement. So now the game plan for Skillous, if it ever was to push with his fairly basic army, has to change to kind of just attack everywhere, and he has done a good job so far containing Serral back to just the 4 bases as he takes his 5th, but he's gonna have to look for an eventual transition. And as I said, actually we see it, it's gonna be 2 Stargates and a fleet beacon to transition into the later portions of the game. Meanwhile, he has to look for ways to split his army in 2 and just be everywhere and keep denying bases while not engaging the army of Serral.
Yeah, this is going to be a very, very big couple of minutes here for Skillous. How effective can he be at denying these bases? And so far, yeah, doing a great job. I will say this is definitely that point in the game where the next base for Serral is not an easy one to take against an extremely mobile army when you have Broodlords, because either you're taking the top left-hand base or the bottom right-hand base that Serral keeps trying to take right now. And that bottom right-hand base has been having a lot of trouble. The top left, I think, would have equal as much. Baneling run by, gonna be able to get a little bit of damage done over here. 12 workers going down, but I'll say Skillous is, he's continuing to push on forward very aggressively into Serral's face.
Yeah, and 12 workers is not that bad, to be honest. Skillous still at a respectable amount at 65 and not even looking to remake those probes at the moment. Instead, he's just gonna add on to his existing army in the form of Tempests. So we're gonna be reinforcing the army value instead. And yeah, that's not too bad. As far as like just those banelings do carve a little bit of a path there for Serral, but we didn't see him very focused on taking down the pylon or the cannons or the shield battery. So I'm not sure that Serral's even gonna look to continue to rely on those banelings to in the later portions of the game. At least he doesn't seem focused on it at the moment.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering what is the big move here for Serral of when he actually wants to do some kind of push-up, because he has, I think, a base that is very close to one of the most important two bases for SKillous, right? Like, in a sense, Broodlords are slow units. You want to be able to have an attack path that's also going to cover your bases to some degree, and I kind of feel like he's well set up in that regard, but he's still trying to get up Neural Parasite, get up a couple more Corruptors. Maybe he's starting to wait for some of the static defenses. I don't know. Do you feel like there's a big trigger moment where Serral feels like, okay, it's go time? Because the longer he waits, the more ready SKillous is with his Tempest and his economy.
Yeah, I think it's more of SKillous that has to be ready to go into the late game against Serral and attack into Serral. He has the tools, however, to attack into Serral, as another couple of Baneling runbys actually do find quite a few workers and a few burrowing there too in the mineral line. Very cute from Serral. But yeah, I think SKillous has to look for openings instead. He does have the faster expansion rate, which is not unheard of in this, in this iteration, in this meta, but it has been unheard of for a very long time. Like, for a very long time, it's like Zerg wants to be one expansion up. Right now, Protoss can actually expand a little bit quicker than Zerg in some regards, and it is a welcoming sign, because if it comes down to this sort of base, or the mirrored base on the side of SKillous, then the Broodlords get a chance to siege when the map starts going in that direction, right? Like from behind without exposing themselves. And as the game progresses, whatever Spore and Spine Forest that Serral can make is movable, it's mobile, while SKillous' cannons and batteries, they're not, right? So I love that SKillous is poking forward. He has the tools that he needs in the Revelation from the Oracle and the Tempests to kind of contest this army of Serral. And I like the way that the game is going for SKillous, but he is definitely the one that needs to be proactive and try to close things out.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. SKillous has definitely been the one that has been proactive and trying to get some damage. And while he does lose a lot of his army up in the top left, he's continuing to make some great progress here on the bottom right, getting in range of some more of these spores. If he starts taking those out, I think he might be able to start whittling away at some of the drones as well that are mining. And it is tough for Serral to have actually super healthy mining at this base right now. Can't really even take one of the gas geysers, and the Infestors even get target fire down, but Storms are going to be able to cover the retreat of those Tempests against any of those Corruptors trying to give chase.
That was surgical. Like, yeah, I mean, that was as surgical as it gets. It was, like the little knife going for the incision there onto the High Templar. So it looks like a little bit reckless from Serral, but he knows that he can get those Templars. So fungals them twice, and with the help of the Broodlords and great target fire, he gets rid of all the Stormers on site.
That is going to be definitely a bit of a blow for SKillous. He's going to need to remax, and he's actually mostly remaxing on a lot of these Zealots right now. Has a lot of supply left to fill, but isn't actually making any other units. So he really does want to just do this kind of split push style attack. Gets one of the two of the Infestors that are on the rally on out. Fungal Growth's going to be coming down on top of the Stalkers. They cannot blink out of here, and that is going to cause problems once the Broodlords start getting involved. Archon's going to just get recalled out, but how many will even make it out?
Yeah, it's the chunkier unit, so a lot of them will make it out in the form of the Archons. But yeah, good moves from Serral, but also decent moves from SKillous. A SKillous that is now back down to 133 supply, but Serral's not maxed either, and neither player with a huge bank. And I love that you noted that he is reinforcing actively with Zealots, because I feel like we laid down the groundwork for understanding what SKillous was trying to do on the opposite side. Like, because we were talking so much about Serral and how Zerg wants to break through with Banelings and kind of just weaken a certain position. That is exactly what SKillous was looking to do with Zealots, right? Trying to breach into the natural and the main of Serral. So Serral had a contingency of Spines and Spores over there, but little by little it was getting whittled down. SKillous not able to push on through eventually, even with the cover of his units moving into the third triangle. But that was very much the plan. It was definitely weakening the defenses. We see here bruised up Spines on camera. They were there for a second, and yeah, a lot of them did get taken down. So SKillous close to breaching, but not quite.
Yeah, kind of an interesting spot now, I feel like, after all of those little trades, the skirmishes back and forth, because SKillous, I think he's looking to try and take a base now, but if you actually look at the income, they are relatively even in terms of their actual income per minute right now. It's been drifting a lot further back toward even. So I am interested if Skill's going to try and take some more bases over here, because he is definitely going to be bleeding out as he tries to reinforce with a lot of charge lots and find openings and take inefficient trades versus static defense. It's going to be tough to, continue to bankroll that unless he can continue to find more economy.
Yeah, this is a cool readjustment from Serral, right? We're used to seeing Serral at this stage of the game with 100 drones. But this time around, he is respecting his opponent enough to say, okay, like, you're not just sitting back. You have a more basic army. I need to make army to match that defensively. And SKillous continues on with the aggression, but Serral is everywhere because he has so much army supply.
Yeah. I mean, even the fact that he can spare a couple of Broodlords over here to help with the defenses, definitely slows things down, gets all of the High Templars again. Not sure what they were doing over there at that angle. And now, even on the top left-hand side, Baneling's going to be able to find a couple connections and at least slow down this army. The Archon's a little bit too bruised and battered to continue, so SKillous is going to retreat on both fronts, and I mean, that just gives Serral even more breathing room now.
Yeah, breathing room, however, Ravi, compared to most Ser games for Serral, is not as welcome as normal because of the drone count, right? Like, normally, it's like, oh, you pushed me back, game over now because I, my economy is just so much greater than yours. I'm like expanding like a wildfire. But in this particular position, they are, like you mentioned, so even in economy that I think SKillous is looking for a transition now, getting the Mothership and potentially going into carriers later on. And yeah, I mean, it's been the High Templars that kind of put a stop to his attack. Good fungals here will catch a lot of these Archons. There's not a recall available, and now with that, the Corruptors with an opportunity or looking to angle to pounce onto the Tempest will be covered by the remaining Stormers.
Yeah. Painful losses there. 3 Archons going down as 900 gas down the drain. We're going to see Serral actually looking pretty confident, very far off of creep. He says, I think I just have the numbers now. I think you do not have what you need. And we end up seeing these Corruptors absolutely decimating the air army that was there. Yes, the ground army is cleaned up for Serral, but I mean, the Broodlords still kind of hold the line for now, maybe?
Yeah, but SKillous brings back his army. Serral to match him, though. So Serral identifies that the army of SKillous that was threatening on the other side has moved back to answer this attack. And he too brings his Link Bane Roach contingency that he had defensively. Still, SKillous with an opportunity to take down a lot of these Infestors. Not going to be able to, as all of the Stalkers fall. And on the retreat are going to be whatever remains of the Broodlords and Corruptors. SKillous, you do not want to chase there. Mothership pretty exposed against the number of Corruptors that we still have on the field for Serral.
A very aggressive 1 Mothership core, 3 low health Archons and a carrier. A couple, I think a lot more Archons going to be coming on forward, but it's just so scary to engage into this army just because a couple of those fungals really lock down your Archons, and the Broodlords start getting some chip damage in it. It all kind of escalates very, very quickly. So is SKillous going to continue to attack here?
He is. I think that's the plan. And yeah, it is dangerous for sure, right? It could end the game in favor of Serral. Serral that did manage to remake Broodlords, but if he hadn't found that time to remake Broodlords, and look at this, SKillous actually goes to the side, and this is really nice because Serral's not very mobile, so he is going to be slow to answer with the Broodlords. There's not much to breach into for the side of SKillous here, so he's just going to probably end up backing away. Please. Maybe he has a recall available. Has to be careful with the fungal still. Oh, great feedbacks, actually. No more fungals available. 1 fungal available for Serral. At the same time, on the other side, he has picked off 18 workers, and the Mothership will also go down. Aw.
Yeah. Mothership going down is unfortunate because it was off on its own. That's a nice burrow. It was off on its own. I think the intention there was to draw the army up to the north and then recall with a Mothership to the south side, which would have been a really nice play, just catching the army out of position yet again and being able to snipe off a base or 2 on this bottom right. But yeah, the Corruptors being able to find the Mothership really does throw a massive wrench into that problem. We kind of see a situation where Serral's still remaining maxed out and continuing to just replenish some of those Infestors and Corruptors. And SKillous, I think he's kind of broke right now. He's still mining for sure. He's still able to gradually replace that army supply, but he's down about 50 right now, and it's taking time to replenish.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Ravi. I mean, the Mothership play was pretty good. I missed the Mothership not being with the army actually somehow, but the army was in a position where it was threatening nothing. So I was like, okay, like this is cool because he's outpacing the army of Serral, and Serral will take a while to get here, but what is he going to get there to defend? And SKillous didn't really want to pressure there. He just, like you said, wanted to pull the army, right? So, but then Serral probably thought better of it, thought, well, like, what are you pressuring? And doesn't really overcommit, finds the Mothership, and the play is dead.
Whoa.
But so are these 2 Infestors and a bunch of Banelings in the middle of the map. So a nice move from SKillous, but the Fungal might look to punish here.
Yeah, he's going to be able to get a lot of these Stalkers in exchange. At least the High Templars managed to make it out of the way of any of those Fungals. And Charge Lots plus Archon's going to be able to easily deal with any of the Lings, so might be able to get the Greater Spire, slow down any additional Broodlords from being made. Warp Prism warps in a ton of extra units also in the main base, so a lot of tech available to be sniped.
Yeah, I mean, the Greater Spider and the Hive both going down simultaneously. Serral now is going for Ultras, but we know what everyone has always thought about Ultras, Ravi. I mean, it's, you know, like we've been watching this game for 12 years. You see Ultras and it's usually the thought that ever goes through everyone's minds, right? Is this gonna work? Because we've seen so many games just being thrown by the chopsticks.
Nice neural parasites on these Archons, going to actually be able to kill the Zealots very quickly, and then actually kill the Carrier as well. Nicely done there by Serral. Gets some very, very good value cleanups on some of these units, but everything in the main base was cleaned up. I think the one thing I will really commend Serral on is he already had another layer ready, and once he saw that all of that other tech in the main base was getting picked off, he immediately started morphing a Hive. So he is going to have, oddly enough, Hive tech available, even though he's not going to have a spawning pool.
That is pretty cool. The Ultras are now out in full force. SKillous not really making Immortals, so those are the hard counter to the Ultra. So, I mean, Archons are going to be okay against Ultras, even good, but not, you know, not insane like Immortals are. Like Immortals just straight against Ultras, like a little bit too well. So that's one of the main reasons why Ultras are not viable in this matchup usually. But SKillous is not making those Immortals. And I mean, it's fair, right? Because there's so many Broodlords out too.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. It's not that Archons, I think, trade very well versus the Ultras, but I think they do buffer against them for quite a bit of time, and a lot of the other units also get damage done. So I'm still waiting on a razor's edge over here, Cats, to see how these Ultras actually end up faring against SKillous' current army. I think it'll be... I am not super hopeful about the Ultras having a massive impact, but I'm ready to be proven wrong. You know, Serral knows a little more about this game than I do, so I'm okay with that.
No doubt. Yeah, and this is a crazy game. If we look at the map, we have to say SKillous is in a great position, right? And if we look at the supply, he's keeping up. If we look at the workers, he's actually a couple ahead. So a very low econ late game, a very exciting game. And I have no idea who's going to win. To be honest, I would maybe slightly favor SKillous. Also, a ton of Tempest against the Broodlords, but you never know. I mean, Serral does have his Vipers. He has his Infestors. He's going to be looking for those Neuroparasites. The Fungals have been impressive throughout the entirety of this game. And Ultras are going to trade very effectively against the Zealots as well. So that fight over... there's not anything else other than Ultras though, so I think in spite of the Neuroparasites, maybe SKillous can take this fight. It's close.
Yeah, I mean, Archons do a lot of extra damage versus biological, so the Ultras do get taken care of, and well, it's going to be on the bottom right hand side that a lot of these units end up going down. Mothership goes down. That's a -400, but at the same time, yeah, SKillous is still getting some progress over here. It's just kind of awkward because he's making progress, but he's making progress through spore crawlers. He's not really getting in and doing any really big substantial damage, and now all the reinforcements for Serral should be on their way over.
Yeah, but they are slow. His reinforcements are predominantly Broodlords, so you know they're going to be slow. And these spores, I mean, they are not easy to replace at this point. Serral is not super rich, and he doesn't have a ton of workers to work with. Excuse the redundancy there, and it's, you know, looking still okay-ish for SKillous. He has a lot of bank to spend. Supply-wise, he is going to be catching up here a little bit. But yeah,
I'm worried about the gas, though, right? Like, I think he does have a mineral bank, and even that's kind of getting depleted over here. But the units he's reinforcing with are things like, it's just pure Stalker, actually. He doesn't have any Zealots on the ground anymore. It's literally just 12 Stalkers get warped in. He's got some good upgrades and stuff coming out on the way, but he is down almost. He's almost like, actually, at this point now, he's doubled in army supply. For a moment, he was actually tripled in army supply. That is what is concerning to me, of if SKillous keeps trying to butt his head into this, Serral is still maxed out on an extremely scary army, and I don't know what he does when Serral gets that big fight.
Yeah, I mean, that is a problem. Oh, SKillous is going to go in and actually snipe one of the Ultras. Again, For Serral, it is actually significantly harder to replace units is the thing. So yeah, SKillous has a basic army that he's trying to break Serral with, and it's getting increasingly hard also because of the positioning. Great feedbacks there from SKillous, but will he be able to evacuate? It looks like the Tempest might be condemned here as the Stalkers don't have much of a chance against Broodlings and Ultras. And now Serral being adventurous out on the other side of the map, and I don't know that he needs to back away here because I think he needs to be taking down some of these bases with his greater army. SKillous' plan right now is, stay with basic army and just threaten to counterattack, threaten to basically base trade to some degree, right? Because, I don't think he can fight the army of Serral head on, but he can outmaneuver it. And he does have longevity in his economy.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually the part I definitely agree with. So I'm kind of with you and surprised that Serral feels like he has to back off. But I guess maybe he is really just concerned that he is effectively down to his only basically 3 or 4 remaining bases that are in also extremely awkward angles. He doesn't exactly have a main base anymore either. So
look at the
it does get very, very shaky if he starts turning this into like a semi-base trade with the mobile units.
Yeah, so 2 very different approaches, 2 very different win conditions, basically. Like, StarCraft, in my mind, always played on 3 fronts. And this is a very different approach from both players, right? Because Serral does, if they fight, Serral wins, no question. But if SKillous can continue to, if they've swapped roles, if SKillous can continue to surrogate out, if SKillous can continue to expand and to continue to elongate his economic lead, then he can definitely take this game on the economic front. And so we see him trading a little bit inefficiently here and there, trying to break through some of the defenses, soften Serral up. So again, they've switched roles, right? It's usually Protoss with a higher tech and Deathball army.
No, 100%. It's going to be very interesting because Serral has a big onus of he really does not want to move out because it's going to be extremely scary. The moment he does, he's going to start getting out positioned. So he needs to stay extremely defensive, defend his very few mining bases over here, which gives SKillous a lot more of the map. But SKillous, because Serral is just staying at home, it's also going to reduce the amount of surface area you can actually attack into. So I am wondering, as things go, Serral is going to take the very bottom right-hand base. Is this going to be a situation where after that bottom right-hand base is established, it's going to take a little bit longer to actually establish safely, it looks like. How does the mining go? Does SKillous get that base that he just sniped off over there on the top left-hand side?
He's gonna try to, like I said. I mean, if this goes to the ultra late game, then Serral's gonna have to trade so much more cost efficiently than SKillous, because SKillous is doing the perfect thing here, which is having 2 different armies trying to deny things. However, Serral looking to punish. The Ultras are gonna chunk through those Stalkers so quickly, and the supply of SKillous plummets. Also the Stalkers caught on the other side of the map as Serral fungals in 2 places at once, north and south, and both sides are won decisively by the Finnish Phenom. Will he now look to capitalize? Finally, the Broodlords moving in a position. I was talking about this base earlier, but this base is the easiest base to siege for those Broodlords because there is no exposure on the ground. It is very difficult to get units in position on the ground to answer that. So Broodlords are gonna have free reign here. And now, SKillous with his back up against the wall, all of a sudden.
I mean, as SKillous, you do have a very, very tough spot of trying to defend all these bases, but actually also Serral, you're on a little bit of a timer here, right? You're trying to get as much damage done before your opponent can actually start remaxing a bunch of these units, but Stalkers managed to blink out of the way of the fungal. What's the priority here as Serral, right? Do you go after the freshest bases? Do you start just trying to go for some of the production and go straight across the map? What's the game plan of how you use your time when you do have time available to go do some damage and actually get aggressive?
Yeah, I mean, there was an opening for Serral. I'm not sure that he knows what the replenishing rate for SKillous is, right? So that is what he's respecting right now. He doesn't know just how big his economy was. Serral has to be thinking, are you maxed out? I think if he knew what the supply of SKillous is right now, if he knew what the army is, he would look to take one more base, because we saw that the approach of Serral was, okay, I just killed enough of your army that I should have at least a window in between warpins where I can take one base. If he knew that his army wasn't threatened or his bases weren't threatened by a counterattack like SKillous is trying to do here, then I think he could have pushed and taken one more base. But his army is so slow that he doesn't just want to give SKillous time for himself out on the map, right? Where he is going to be exposed. What Serral doesn't seem to know is that half of his army, the ground army, just the Ultras and the Infestor, these guys are enough to take on Skillous's full army right now. Because if he knew that, the Broodlords should just be out on the map killing stuff.
Yeah. His bottom right-hand base might actually get denied by just a couple of the Zealots or get very, very low, as I think some of the Lings are starting to get over there to try and clean things up. But every one of these bases is super important. Going to be able to find a couple more of these Stalkers with some of the fungal growths. Catches quite a few of them. That base, yeah, it's going to be finishing up almost in the red, if not the orange at that point. So it's going to be a big target for later on. And SKillous once again comes into the top left-hand base. Drones may manage to burrow, but Zealots have their eye on the prize and are going after that hatchery, which will potentially shut down all of the mining bases again that were coming up. No, keeps hatchery alive just barely, but this is a big moment.
Yeah, the Infestors do arrive. They will catch a few of the Stalkers in the back. The High Templars, they're not even with energy for Storm, just looking for those feedbacks to allow for the Stalkers to escape. But yeah, like the army supply of Serral is just so insane at this point. So he's just looking to take one base at a time, to secure one base at a time. Another Zealot runby at the top will actually end up securing that base finally. And that is important. Income graph just to hopium a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, SKillous has definitely been leading in the income for quite a bit of time. And specifically, I think his gas mining has been a lot better more recently compared to Serral. I think it's almost 3 times as much gas, which you can see is the limiting factor for Serral right now. He's got actually a nice little mineral bank, but his gas is pretty starved out. Lurkers being added in are going to make things more complicated, especially since I think there was only 1 observer. Now there's 2 observers on the map, so...
And that is an interesting move from Serral. He's trying to poke with an army that can more easily escape and can be more mobile and therefore more easily out of position, and try to take bases down with that. But again, I think that this army is the mobile one, that this army is the one that should be defending. And the Broodlords, pretty much uncontested with Infestors, should be taken down bases slowly. Like once you go to the top left-hand side, if you're Serral, you get 3 bases. There's a cluster of the 3 freshest bases, the coolest dudes in the top left-hand side that Serral can take down with Broodlords easily, right? And then you can actually defend with Lurker Ultra against everything else that SKillous has. But Serral is being overly cautious, and once again, we find ourselves in a position where SKillous is nearly maxed out, and he still has the better income, right? So Serral needs to find another one of those gigantic trades, and when that door opens, then he seems to be willing to move out a little bit more with the Broodlords and take down a base or 2. But SKillous continues to play his game and for his win condition, and there's still definitely hope for him.
Yeah, it is so funny. If you remove the Tempest from Skillous's army, you could look at this army and think, like, yeah, this is like a 7-minute, 30 or 8-minute army, right? Like something you just have a bunch of Zealots, 31 Stalkers, and a couple of High Templars maybe that are yet to morph into some of those Archons. But it is a funky composition. He's gonna try and make something happen over here, but Lurkers are...
Careful,
really
Fungo,
like,
no!
Oh, boy.
It's huge! The Stormers, the Templars are gonna try to storm to slow down. Great feedbacks, actually. A lot of those Infestors are gonna go down. Really important secondary for Skillous. However, the Ultras on the other side do deflect the army pretty comfortably by the looks of it. And Skillous, he needs both of these bases that he's taken right now because he's unable to breach now onto the last remaining mining base for Serral. Serral now finally getting a little bit adventurous after those trades. Again, he gets a good trade. He feels like he has an opening. He's gonna move with those Broodlords and take one of those essential bases for Skillous to mine out. So Skillous is gonna look for something out on the map. Gotta be careful with the Ultra still, though.
This is really big right now, too, also, because the Infestors, there's only 2 of them left, and the Infestation Pit is never remade, so not really a lot of potential to reproduce those. The Ling's going to come swarming on forward alongside these Ultras. The Lurkers super far behind. Are they going to be able to get a nice concave on this? A lot of the Stalkers are going to end up falling over here. Oh, God, a lot of the Stalkers don't even manage to blink out of there.
Oh, no.
Even the ones that do seem like they're actually derping a little bit. Oh, Skillous drops massively in supply after some really, really cool trades.
Yeah. Unfortunate. And yeah, I mean, Serral finds the opening that he was looking for. He is able to punish the bottom right-hand side expand, which is the one that he cannot allow Skillous to mine. And yeah, he is in a great position to punish or to sit back at this point. So he is gonna look for the punish here. The Lynx are gonna kill a lot of those probes in the freshest base that Skillous has. And the Ultra still uncontested. There is no Immortals here on the field, no Archons. The Stalkers and Zealots are going to have a really tough time against those Ultras.
Very, very difficult spot now for Skillous, as It really stings when you know you have all these bases available and stuff, but you just don't have the units you need to actually defend them very easily anymore. Serral has that top center base and could probably try reestablishing the bottom right-hand side just because he knows now so much of Skillous' army has to be over here on the top left. He is effectively on the defensive now against a pretty scary looking army for Serral that is a little bit more mobile now with the Ultras and the Lurkers, not just the Broodlords relying on being the big powerhouse unit there.
Yeah, it is so difficult though. I mean, the Lurkers and Ultras are such a great answer to such a basic unit composition that Skillous is working with. So the Broodlords are also, right? Like all of the pieces of Serral are just so much better than the pieces that Skillous has to work with on a straight up fight. So the only chance for Skillous was to outmaneuver here, but he also, like you said, Serral was so patient in taking his bases that it makes it very difficult for Skillous to find those openings. Even we saw him poking earlier into this split base that's nearby those cells that we just saw on camera, but it's already exhausted. So, there's essentially just the one location to fight for at the top here, top left-hand side for Skillous. That is the one place that he can carve an advantage with his basic unit composition, but Serral knows that. So what does he do? He has his entire army now concentrated on this side of the map. He no longer needs to split it in two to try to defend the south.
Difficult spot. A couple of Zealots going to try and run over here, but there's not actually any mining going on those bases. It's actually just a couple of tech buildings that may be worth sniping off, but at the cost of losing some of these bases in the top left, I don't think the Zealots are really going to help defend those bases, but this is still going to be a painful loss nonetheless. I think Skillous, really more than anything else, it's not that this is going to be like a critical measure to try and pull the army back. It's just Skillous accepting the losses he knows he can't stop and finding something in exchange for it.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And he's not going to be able to find much. Great Blink here is gonna actually kill a few Lurkers, which is really nice, but he is 110 supply of, subpar Protoss units to 184 supply of the best Zerg units. So if we look at army value, actually, it's pretty nasty.
Yeah.
Just open that tab and army value is just, really paints the picture here.
I think there are only 4 mineral patches Skillous is mining from now. I think it's just the 4 in the top left. Actually, now it's 3. Since I began that sentence, it became 3.
Nice.
Yeah, that is
Serral now comfortable enough reps to go on the offense, and this is just closing moments of this game, I think.
Yeah, I mean, a really, really honestly impressive showing there from Skillous. It was a very odd game where Skillous was on such a low tech army for a lot of the later half, but we saw a little bit of everything. We saw Skillous trying to go up to the high tech army. There we see the fungals, the big storms coming on down, but just the sheer might of Serral is a little too much. And he takes a 2-0, but goddamn,